Hey everyone, JC here. Just gonna check the volume. Okay. So actually, this is gonna be like a straight upload. I'm not gonna edit this. So probably if I mess up a couple of times, I'm just gonna leave it in and see my cat is running around like an Energizer bunny. I'm not gonna cut it out. Today what I want to talk about is I actually I found a couple of live streams that allegedly stream from the Ukraine. And it is possible, but you have to understand that every picture that we see today, every video that we see today could be basically fake. We could think we are looking at something, but actually we're looking at something completely different or a different time. Or, I mean, I can also stick a timestamp to this video right now. And it doesn't mean, though, that the video is actually at that timestamp. You see what I mean? So you have to be very careful what you watch and hear. But what I'm gonna do actually is I'm gonna make the assumption that all the cameras are real, and they're showing some part of the Ukraine. Obviously, they don't show any kind of violent stuff. They don't show the war. It's it's even in parts which are remote right now, which are not affected by the war so much or at all. There's chat there, and I thought it would be interesting for me to kind of do a live reaction to some of the things on the chat. So, in the chat, from what I see, there are a couple of Russian bots that come from time to time, and they just repeat the propaganda that was fed to them. And I actually wrote a post about it on Facebook, pretty much. I think it was a day or 2 days into the war, where I went point by point, like what Putin said in his speech. I took it apart, and I said, okay, how much of that is legit, and how much of that is lies? And it turns out that, 95% of it was lies. Okay. So, but the propaganda works very effectively these days. And yeah, many people unfortunately believe it. According to various polls, in fact, about 65 to 70% of Russians actually support what Putin is doing. Okay. So, yeah, the problem is not just Putin. Putin is a problem and has been a problem for, well, decades, because he's been in power for like over 20 years, I think. He changed the constitution in order for him to remain in power. Uh, I think I'm not entirely sure. I could be wrong here, but I think in Russia the term limit is 4 years. It could be 5 years. I don't know. But anyway, he should have been out after 8 or 10 years, depending how long it is, and he's not. He had the puppet Medvedev for a while, and after him he came back to power. And I think even under Medvedev, Putin was actually prime minister, and he was, of course, really pulling all the strings. Okay, so yeah, politically, what's going on in Russia is a disaster. I think people after the collapse of the Soviet Union, I think they wanted something better, obviously. But I argue that, despite all the talk about bringing down the communists, etc., a lot of these people who were in politics or in the army or things like that, they are Soviet people. You know what I mean? Like the Soviet elements run through their veins. And yeah, maybe they don't call themselves like, I'm a communist, but ideologically they are. And that's the kind of big tragedy, is that right now we're seeing the continuation, in fact, of the kind of hardline, strongman Soviet Union. And Putin, in fact, said that he wants to bring back. Well, he didn't outright say, "I want to bring back the Soviet Union," but he did say that he wants to bring Russia back to the status of a superpower. And well, that that means going back to the days of the strong man, again, ruling with a fist, kind of Soviet Union dictatorship. And again, yeah, that's kind of what's going on. So these Russian bots, there's a few of them, and yeah, they just parrot whatever Putin has said. They took that and they said, "Oh, well, Putin said so, so it must be true." So I'm just gonna uncritically follow what Putin has said. Unfortunately, and I started losing some friends over it. I don't even know who these people are, probably, because most of the people on my Facebook list, I've never met in real life. So they could be anybody. Like, honestly, I don't know. I don't know who they are. Maybe from the list I have, maybe from the people that I actually know, like I actually met in real life, it's probably like 10% or something. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know like the other 90% at all. I don't know who they are. Uh, well, I know who they are, but I've never like physically met them, let's just say. And that's very important because if you don't actually physically meet people, you know, then we resort to reading some posts on Facebook, and posts on Facebook can be very easily taken out of context. Okay, so lately, what I've been basically saying is the exact same thing. Like the Russians have this kind of Alzheimer's moment that, or and it's probably not the right term, but basically, yeah. So whatever the authority, it's basically like an appeal to an authority, right? uh, what Putin has said, everything is true, so I'm going to accept that as truth, and I'm going to parrot that as truth. But what I want people to not forget is that these kind of things have also happened in the States. Now, I'm an American. Um, I have also in my family, I have people from Russia, but me in my values, in my thinking, I'm definitely more kind of Western. But what I do really is I take the best parts from everywhere in the world and I kind of try to combine that together. So I wouldn't say like I wouldn't say like I belong to any country, any piece of rock on the earth, or I don't belong to a political president, let's say like that. I'm an independent person. I can think for myself. So, but yeah, this kind of thinking though, it goes back to something like Iraq, like I pointed out in my posts. Now, during Iraq, uh, the invasion itself took place in March 2003. So in those days, there was no Facebook. I know it sounds very odd, but that's true. There was no Facebook back in 2003, not as we know it today, anyway. Because the Facebook as we know it today actually started in 2006, I think. And that's when I joined as well, around 2006, 2007. So unfortunately, I was very vocal in my opposition to the war in Iraq. Unfortunately, though, I have no proof, I have no record to actually demonstrate that's the case. But I was very vocal against it because I knew that it was bullshit. Everything, the whole thing was just a farce. Um, the reasons that they gave were really crappy reasons. Again, you have to evaluate the evidence, and it's true that yeah, we don't have access to, let's say, CIA, FBI, or other agencies information. That is true, but we can evaluate though what we hear, and what we heard from George Bush or Dick Cheney or Donald Rumsfeld. He was actually even more on TV than Cheney, I would argue. Condoleezza Rice, another goon. I took all that information, I evaluated it using logic and reason, and it just didn't add up. It didn't add up. So it was a lie. And, it later, of course, it turned out to be a lie, proven to be a lie. But at the time, there were some people who really believed that. And to make even worse, the media, right? Like, for example, CNN. CNN, by the way, got huge. They got huge after the first Gulf War. I mean, CNN always existed, like, before that. I don't know when they started, but it was there. It was kind of there in the background. Uh, but during the Gulf War, like, they got really huge. Like, their ratings just shot up like insane. And what that shows is that war sells. War gives you clicks. Uh, War drums up at least temporary interest. And yeah, so CNN got big of war. You have to admit that. And so when the second Gulf War came, I expect the news to double check the information because, again, we don't have access to the CIA, FBI, etc. But what most media did during the second Gulf War is they didn't do any of that. They didn't double check the information. So what they did is they heard something from the CIA and then they just printed that as if it's a fact. And then hands done, hands washing, and I go home. That's it, we're done. And I'm like, when I saw that happening, I was like, there's no way. There's no way that they're pulling that trick. But they did. And it worked. So in the conclusion here, I just want to say that this is not whataboutism, because whataboutism is you look at one problem and you say, well, what about this thing? And you completely dismiss actually the original problem. So no, I'm not doing that at all. What's happening right now in the Ukraine is a real problem, and it's a real threat. And but I think there's a lot of hypocrites out there who are saying that these crimes are happening. So Russia, Russia, Russia. It's interesting because there are teams, sports teams that have been banned from competitions. Of course, the banking system was removed from the SWIFT system, etc. And they say that it's an illegal, offensive, international war because, right, it's outside of the Russian borders, so it's an international war. So there's a lot of sanctions, there's a lot of UN talks, etc. But when where were the sanctions when Iraq did the illegal and offensive occupation in Iraq? You see, this is what I'm saying. It's a level of hypocrisy that we haven't seen before. There was no punishment for the U.S. There were no calls for. Well, that's not really true. There were some calls, but definitely everybody right now wants Putin to be tried at the Hague. But not everybody wants Bush to be tried at the Hague, or Dick Cheney, or Condoleezza Rice. And I'm like, there's a disconnect here. You're favoring one set of people over another, even though they both did an atrocious thing. And unfortunately, during the Iraq War, for me, that was the awakening moment because well, at the time I was probably like 20 or something, and I really started paying attention to politics and history and what's going on in the world. And when you see that your government is committing a crime, uh, what you should do, what everybody should do in that moment, is to look at the history of that country. And then if you look at the history of the US, just you lift the lid a little bit, just a little bit. You don't even need to lift it up a lot, just a little bit. You notice that it's war crime after war crime after war crime. You look there, there's like Vietnam, um, what was it called? Agent Orange or something like that. Yeah, dropping napalm on innocent children, etc. There was this. There's a very famous photo, by the way, of a girl. I think she's I'm not sure if she's naked or not, because obviously, these days with pedophilia, it's like limit, but she could be. Anyway, she's running away from an explosion. It's a very famous photo, so I'm sure like it's been published, and you can go look at it if you want. Uh, but these people were like brutally murdered by, let's just be honest, superior American firepower. So not okay. There was Pinochet. Uh, basically the CIA made a coup in Chile, right? And they installed Pinochet in power, and then he went around and basically committed genocide on his people. The Shah in Iran is another example where we thought we could install a kind of puppet in Iran, and look how that turned out to be. And of course, right now, this again, this is not getting airtime because I think that there's an element of racism that goes into this part. When we kill brown skinned people, like it's okay, nobody cares, nobody counts. But if it's white people, then we have to like talk about it 24/7. Oh, the humanity, all the dead children, etc. Well, right now, speaking of dead children, um, Saudi Arabia, with US help, is committing genocide in Yemen, where there are children starving, dying, etc. Why don't you talk about that? In Afghanistan, there are draconian sanctions right now imposed on the Taliban because, I guess they refuse to do some stuff. The sanctions obviously hurt them to a certain extent, but guess what? It hurt mostly the very poor in Afghan society. So now we have millions of people starving in Afghanistan. And in fact, there is a very scary report I read yesterday. It could be from the UN, I'm not sure right now. But they said that by the end of, what was it? By the end of 20, so this year, by the end of this year, they estimate that maybe 97% of the Afghanistan population will be under basically extreme threat of either famine or malnourishment, etc. Because humanitarian aid is just not like flowing. So again, these are US sanctions. This is very important to understand here. We pretend to be the good guys. We're the good guys. We're dropping the freedom bombs, the ones with the smiley faces on them. So when we do it, it's fine. But but if you do it, it's bad. So yeah, only the US can be the world police. Anyway, today obviously I'm not gonna go into the live streams because well, I talked way too much. But I just wanted to kind of set it up, and if people are interested to hear where I'm coming from, now this video I can basically point to this video. That's the point of this clip right now, is that if I don't repeat myself, just people can go and watch this. Okay, so of course I will repeat some of that before the live stream because I think it's important to state who I am and what my positions are, and yeah, go from there. But definitely today I covered a lot of ground, a lot of detail, and yeah, so the entire purpose is just so people I can now point to this video and say, watch this before you watch that. Because once you understand everything here, you understand everything there. So that's it. Obviously, open for debate. If people have something to say, maybe something I'm wrong about, or you know, then drop a comment. Let's go from there. But just I want to again, once again, I just want to repeat that first of all, I consider myself an American. Yes, I do have family on the Russian side as well, and I have to say, you know from the contacts I have on Facebook from Russia right now, I would say like 95% of them are against the war. Okay, so there is one person who is a very staunch supporter of the war, which I completely clashed with all the way, but the others not at all. So these are e- even varying ages. It can be young people, older people. It doesn't really matter. It's just it depends on the education and where you take the information from, because we know that in Russia a lot of the media is state owned, and so they have these fake debates on TV, which I was in Moscow back in 2010, so like 12 years ago. Back then, my salary was 50,000 rubles, which at the time was equal to 2,000 bucks. And after the Crimea debacle, the value that same amount of money was equal to about $850. So already the value dropped by more than half. And now, I think the latest I checked a couple of days ago, I think it's worth only 400 bucks. So that's like, yeah, basically a fifth of the, that's like an 80% drop since 2010. That's pretty scary. That's definitely going to trickle down to the population, which I'm not really for, because you might, on one hand, I think the image of the West is that, okay, we're gonna actually, yeah, we're gonna make the Russian people suffer, but eventually they're gonna have enough and they're gonna overthrow the government. But you have to be very careful here, because it can easily have the other effect as well, of that the people are gonna rally behind Putin. So you have to be very careful. They're playing with people's lives, man. Like, they consider hypotheticals with that involve human lives, and I'm not like, for doing that. And again, they're not these people, by the way, who are in the government. They are lawyers, and that I understand to be in politics. You need to know law. I get it, but you also need to be a leader. You also need to be a ruler. You need to understand what ruler means. And if you're just a lawyer, I argue that you don't have leader abilities. You don't know what it is to rule, actually. So, yeah, that's the other thing. Um, so, yeah, definitely just be aware that a lot of people in Russia are against this war. But unfortunately, again, thanks to propaganda, I wanted just to finish this story very quickly. So in 2010, when I was in Moscow, on state TV, which is like the first channel, I think. Well, I mean, they own many channels, but the first channel is one of them. They have these fake debates, like around 9 o'clock, I think, in the evening, or 10 or something like that, where they discuss some kind of policy, right? But they will have a person from the Kremlin, so a mouthpiece of Putin, and some kind of opponent. And that televised debate, it's not fair whatsoever. I mean, there's no hardball questions. It's all kind of softballs, and the time allocation is very weird, because the guy from the Kremlin gets a lot more time to talk than the other guy. And this tells you right away that the debate is not fair, because if you have, let's say, 20 minutes to talk, that guy is going to just bombard you with arguments, right? And then you have maybe 5 minutes to respond, and there's no way in those 5 minutes that you're going to respond to all the arguments that that guy made in 20. It just doesn't happen. In any debate, it doesn't happen. So, yeah, it's fake. And of course, they have these, at the end of the show, people have to call a number and vote for who they think is most right. And guess what happens there? It's like 85% to 90% usually go with the Kremlin mouthpiece. So, yeah, that's kind of what's going on in Russia. And yeah, anyway, that's it for today's video, I think. So again, I made this video mainly so that people can Well, I can point people to it later. It's like, okay, if you want more information, more background, then watch this video before you watch other videos. Okay, that's it. Um, so yeah, stay safe. I actually wanted to do this thing today, but I couldn't. I understand that time is a bit of the matter because obviously, if the war stops today, which would be great, uh, then tomorrow in a live stream, the chat will be completely different, right? So, yeah, I need to kind of catch it while the war is still going. But I'm not making any money from it. This is absolutely not some kind of business opportunity or anything like that. It's just a commentary of what I see in the chat. Because you'll notice that in the video itself, there's really not much to see. It's just there's really nothing happening. It's just maybe a car passing by every now and then, but that's about it. All right, that's it. I'm signing off. Stay safe, take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.